All right, we're gonna get started. We've got Will Compton and Chris Stokes from off One Workforce Global, and I ran into Will. I think because of Vistage circles, we both kind of are in some of the same travel in some of the same space. This is going to be relevant to I think every group practice out there because let me set up the because. We are not in a space where we can dramatically shift compensation on clinicians, right? Maybe the industry will shift over time, but a lot of us need 5-10% more profitability in our practices. And that's not going to happen without destroying our practices if we did that with clinicians. So admin costs are really the only lever we can pull on. And any of you that have hung around semi-private practice for a while, you know we're obsessed with admin cost per session, which is your total admin labor cost divided by sessions provided in a year. So that's where Will and Chris came in. I think for the last 3 to 5 years, I've kind of been a looky-loo, a little bit of a vicarious experiencer as other people have experimented with the offshore stuff. There have been horror stories, and there have been absolute successes. So what really intrigued me about Will and Chris in this discussion when we started talking to them, and what really sold me was my own team kind of going all in on this, is this idea, and they'll unpack it a little more of really kind of an embedded person. And instead of living 3 counties over, they might live across a body of water, but otherwise they're pretty dovetailed into your team. And that's very intriguing to me versus a call center that consistently mispronounces my practice's name, right? So this is really Q&A. We'll give them a little bit of a chance here to kind of set up what they do, how it's different, what offshoring, nearshoring, all that kind of stuff is. Please talk about the cost savings, and then we'll bombard you with questions. So, Will, Chris, tell
Sounds
us about
great.
what you do.
Yeah, sure thing. Ken, thanks. Thanks for the setup there. And for those who joined our presentation yesterday, I'll try not to be redundant and bore you with the same facts and topics we talked about yesterday. But again, for those who did not join, thanks for the time today. I recognize it's Saturday, so we appreciate everybody carving out some time to speak with us. So yeah, Ken, again, thanks for the tee up there. Chris and I are co-owners in a company called One Workforce Global. We have been helping develop offshore teams for our clients for the better part of a decade plus. We've got 2,000 employees over in the Philippines. So again, for those who heard our business model yesterday, that's where we have built our teams out of. There's lots of reasons for that, which we can share maybe during the Q&A session of why we picked the Philippines. But Ken said it well. Really, the way that we look at our model is we're a remote extension of your team, your brand, your culture, your people. So, like Ken said, we're not really an outsourcing arm, although technically, of course, our employees are in the Philippines. But we talked about this yesterday. The real magic behind all of this is really not that magical. It's hiring great people, taking really good care of them, paying them well, and then again having them buy in to the culture of your practice, your company. So as Ken mentioned, our folks are 100% dedicated. They are handpicked based on your job descriptions, your software requirements, what you would want in an A-plus player. We go out, we recruit for that. And again, that person becomes an exclusive, dedicated support member of your organization. All the while, on our side, they're employees of One Workforce Global. We pay their health insurance benefits, we offer them PTO, take good care of them, love on them so that they're going to be high performing employees for your team. So I'll kind of stop there. That was a little bit of an overview of our company. Obviously, we can dig in a little bit deeper on specific questions, but that's who we are and that's what we're doing.
And by extension of our team, you mean that they're showing up to our weekly staff meetings? I mean, like we can essentially, am I thinking of it incorrectly that again, instead of a remote employee that's 2 counties over, they're a remote employee that is in a different across a different body of water, but otherwise it's largely the same.
Yeah, that's the idea, Ken. Again, we want those folks to be drinking the coffee out of your coffee cups, wearing t-shirts that are branded to to your company. Again, to really feel like they're part of, because we want you to feel like that, right? We want you to know who these folks are. We want you to understand that we're hiring great people. But Ken, that's right. In our model, whether they're sitting on the East Coast, the West Coast, wherever that may be, with the technology and the way everything has advanced, it really doesn't matter where folks are sitting anymore. I mean, heck, we're a good example of that on this call today. I'm sitting on the West Coast. My partner Chris is in South Carolina. So no different than what we're doing now. And as one of a final comment here, Ken, all of our folks work U.S. based hours. So again, that just doubles down on the idea that you've got a team member that's fully supportive in your time zone, working your hours.
Yeah. I'll throw in there that one of the other practice owners in our 1F group, so we have these 1F and Streamline groups that meet all day once a month for practice owners. One of the practice owners, they had gone out and found their own. Well, they kissed a lot of frogs before they found a prince, right? But the owner kind of laughed. They're like, "This is the best employee I've actually had," right? Like 7 years. I think this person's going to work here forever. Like it's they are a beloved team member. So tell me about cost savings.
Yep.
Are we saving $1,000 a year, $2,000 a year off a $40,000 position? What does a full timer run us approximately?
Yeah, great question. And Chris, I promise I'll let you jump in here in a second as well. Yeah,
Fire
Ken,
away.
and again, we went through this yesterday. So for those who maybe saw this mock-up, these are round numbers, but typically what we see in this space is savings from 40% up to 70% off of your top line traditional US based employees. So you can do your own math if you're paying someone $20 an hour, $25 an hour, or a flat salary, whatever that compensation model is on your side. Again, traditionally, anywhere from 40 to 70% savings is what you should expect to realize. And I'll caveat that comment with without sacrificing the quality of the person you're getting. Chris and I have been doing this a long time, and there's no race to the bottom on price while you sacrifice quality. So, experienced, quality, high performing people with that cost savings is really where we're marrying the two together to provide the real ROI that you'd be looking for.
Chris, tell me about language, English. I think a lot of us have fears here about I'm gonna hire somebody, it's gonna be bad for brand because we can't
Yep.
understand them.
Yeah, that's a great question. Everyone has I'll say the India model in their head, right? Where the language isn't great, heavy accents, things like that. That is one of the main reasons we are actually in the Philippines. So in the Philippines, English is a first language. So they actually all coursework from elementary school through college is taught in English. And so it's not a second language, it's really a first language. So if you come through the education system, I mean, most of our folks speak better English than I do. So that it's they're very proficient. They're coming into this space, going to college to work in this offshore BPO space, as we call it. And so they're constantly working on it. They're constantly engaged with U.S. companies, and so they're just I'll say elevating their language as they move forward. And that's one of our secrets, kind of as Will touched on. We're hiring experienced people. We're not pulling people straight out of college. We're picking somebody that's already been doing this, already working for U.S. companies, and bringing them into our fold.
So another question, I don't know if it came up yesterday, but I know it's there for a lot of folks here. Our industry tends to be very people forward, social justice, workers' rights. I think there's some fear that we do this. We've got kids chained to a bench in a hut somewhere answering phones. Tell me about workers and quality of life, and are we
Yep.
exploiting somebody by doing this? Help us.
No, it's actually quite the opposite. In the Philippines, like a lot of developing countries, there's no backstop on there's no I'll say entitlement programs or welfare or anything of that nature. So people are really working to get these jobs. And the example I'll give you, coming into the BPO industry, we hire a lot of nurses to work back for our healthcare clients. They may not be doing nursing work, but they've come through the education system as a nurse. A nurse working for us is making about 3 times as much as they would in an actual hospital in the Philippines. And so, very desirable job. They're making great wages. And kind of you touched on, they stay with us forever. This is a job they aspire to do. It's not a transition in their career.
Fair to say this is a net positive quality of life
Absolutely.
job versus exploiting. In other words, not, I don't want to be the, saviors of the world kind of thing. That's not our attitude, but we can kind of rest assured that this is actually potentially a win-win, like for our practice, and for the people that we hire.
Of course.
All parties benefit from this theoretically.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons we only hire full-time folks is because we're able to give them really good healthcare HMOs, so they can take care of themselves and their families and be secure.
So you had some questions here. Yeah, what are the processes for
Yep.
coverage when
Great
they're out?
questions. Yeah, great questions. Yeah, Ken, let me jump in on that one. Thanks for the question, Greta. Yeah, great question. If you had one individual supporting your practice, just like here in the US, if someone's out on vacation, there's going to be obviously a gap, right? Because our folks, again, to Ken's point, we're taking care of them so they get 10 days of PTO, that's standard as an example. 10 days of sick leave, also standard. So again, we're not going to solve the problem of someone being out. That said, Greta, as we scale and build teams, well, this may not be pertinent to you, but when we have two, three, four people with a client, we always add additional staff on our side to cover that gap you're talking about. But again, with one individual, you're going to still see that challenge. Two, three plus, you will not see this.
It's the same challenge if you hired somebody here all by themselves.
Right. We're not going to solve that. But again, as we scale teams, we've got clients that have 30 or 40 employees with us. Obviously, we've got, redundancy over and beyond what they would need.
Lynette asked, can you unpack the PPO uh, abbreviation acronym?
BPO.
Oh,
So
BPO.
yeah,
Sorry.
yeah. Sorry, it's business process outsourcing. That's the umbrella that this industry falls under, whether it be
Yeah.
offshore, remote staffing, et cetera. And in that industry in the Philippines, there's over 2 million folks in that umbrella.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see. Somebody says I've had people who are offshore. My issue's been that they're not assertive and tend to be more passive. How do you manage this as a cultural issue? Also, are they in their homes? Are they in a call center? What's the stability of network and technology and stuff like that?
Yeah, I'll address the first part on the assertive piece. It's certainly there can be cultural differences where people are very sheepish. One of the things that we hire for and we're able to do because we are sort of a white glove, higher quality, is the ability to screen for those outgoing personalities and making sure that if we're hiring for somebody for a practice, that they're the exact kind of personality that you want that's going to mesh with your team, right? So if I'm all quiet and I don't want to talk, it's not going to be a good fit. But most of the folks we hire, especially when they're, in patient facing or even like a sales type role, you've got to have the outgoing personality. And so that's something we always screen for and work with the clients to find.
What about location, technology, stability of internet, all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, great question as well. What we do there is a lot of our healthcare folks are in our office. It's certainly an option to every client. We let it each client make the decision whether that's on-site, hybrid, or work from home. The pros and cons. I mean, obviously, on-site is great from I'll say a compliance issue. But we also have a lot of healthcare companies that work remotely. We screen their office environments, obviously making sure that they're not using their phones in a secure space. It's entirely up to the client on how that works. And then from a stability standpoint, Philippines is very stable from an internet and power standpoint. So if you're in our office, we have redundant internet, redundant power. We operate in what are called cyber parks, and so the government supports these to set them up so that they're very stable, very safe. No downtime. We've never had any issues in that space. And then I think the other piece is when we do have work from home or hybrid employees, we are always doing internet speed checks, backup power, things of that nature. If there's ever a reason, again, very rare that they should lose connectivity for any reason, we bring them back into the office to work from there.
So, one, you guys work in the HIPAA space already, right? This is
Yep,
not occasionally we do
Absolutely.
HIPAA. You guys are very familiar and
yep.
comfortable with HIPAA. So talk to us about HIPAA, and I think, I mean, the irony is, of course, we probably have a ton of exposure here that we take for granted. But I think the idea of, client data, credit card numbers, et cetera, crossing a border, and ending up on the dark web or whatever. Tell me how that's managed. How big of a fear is that? And then maybe as an extension, since we don't operate in the Philippines, are there things like background checks on these people when they're hired, et cetera? So,
Yeah, great question. So on the background check, yes, everyone has to undergo. It's called the NBI, so National Bureau of Investigation, like an FBI on our side. Everyone has to pass that. That's that's the gold standard over there. If there's any negative records, we obviously don't hire the person. We update that on an annual basis as well to make sure that there's no negative impacts on their record. Um, on wait, or Ken, what was the other question you had there?
well, just HIPAA,
The HIPAA
Oh
information,
compliant.
yeah,
sensitive
so
information leaving the U.S.
Yep.
yeah. So that's actually one of the most common questions we get. So HIPAA compliance, we do our own HIPAA audits, our own HIPAA training to make sure that we're compliant, doing annual audits every year. So we've got that check. From a data standpoint, this is where we found that integrating, just like Will said, whether it's 3 counties over or in the Philippines, we integrate in the same fashion. So VPN connections or whatever your IT team or third party needs to connect. But we almost always recommend that you're setting them up just like any remote user, an email, access to your EHRs, whatever other softwares you may need, so that they're really only accessing and reading the data, never storing it on our side. So the PHI is never stored on our end. And again, just like any remote employee. And that also gives, the business owners, IT team, the ability to view and see everything that's going on and have full control, role-based control. And then, if they ever want to shut it off, it's just a button click away. It's not like you're sending a file over to us. We're working the file and sending it back. It's literally just a remote employee accessing your system.
Well, I think if most of us unpack the fears too, it would be that there would be some incentive for this person to misuse the data. But if I'm using your nurse example, and I don't know if it translates as far as multiples, but you said a nurse that's based in the Philippines might be making 2 or 3 times what they would make in a hospital setting. There's probably some similar multiplier for somebody doing billing or scheduling versus if they were doing it locally.
Correct.
These are cherry jobs. These are jobs that
Absolutely.
are incentivized well above the average compensation rate. These are jobs people don't want to lose. Very competitive jobs. So some of that, is maybe mitigated.
Yeah, absolutely. The in a lot of cases, and actually I would say in most cases, folks are coming into Manila for the most part from some of the other provinces. The Philippines is thousands of islands coming there to work these jobs to actually earn money for their entire family, like
Yeah.
extended family as well. So this is, not only are they supporting themselves and their immediate family, most of the time they're supporting their extended family as well. So it's critical that they keep in these jobs and perform well.
Well, and I'll throw this one out there because you said Manila. Therapists are travel junkies, by the way. One of the marketing wrinkles on this needs to be that I can now justify a trip to the Philippines every year just to
That's
check in with my person.
Absolutely.
Y'all have never seen the beaches in the Philippines and stuff. They're world
meet
class.
you over there, Ken. We will get you there. That's great.
So, Kevin, somebody asked again, is this
Yep.
a dedicated person or is it whoever grabs the phone? These are really dedicated people, first name
Absolutely.
100%.
basis. Yeah.
Yep, 100%. That's right, Kevin. Yeah, you would have the ability to also pick that person. So part of our recruiting process is again, we're using your job descriptions, your nice to haves of an A+ employee, recruiting for that role specifically, sharing resumes, sharing the recorded interview with that employee. And some clients want to get involved, some don't, but we always encourage our clients, if you want to meet the candidate, interview them yourselves, that's how we typically place someone. So to your point, Kevin, you would know exactly who was working with you.
Is it fair to say, and again, I don't think anybody in our industry would want to skirt workers' rights or anything, but is it fair to say these are lower liability employees in the sense that some of the regulations that get misused against an employer in the U.S. aren't going to apply to us because they're offshore?
That's exactly right. Yeah, so we're the employer in this case. So
Right.
you would not be and Ken in this case, you would not be the employer. So all that liability falls on One Workforce Global as opposed to yourself.
And for people that aren't familiar, it's similar maybe to a PEO model, right? Essentially, these folks are employed by you, but then leased out or something equivalent to us, correct?
Yeah,
That's
and that's a good, yeah, that almost dovetails on what Leanne's question was in the chat there. Yes, that's correct, Leanne. We're almost a contractor relationship in this aspect because, again, we're the employer of record. Our service contract, One Workforce Global, is with the client. We take all the HR responsibility and, like Chris just said, liability from the employer side. So that's correct, Leanne, based on your question.
So tell us about technology. Do we need to provide them with computers? Do they come with computers? What are they typically trained on as far as software, Microsoft Office, et cetera?
Go ahead, Chris. Yeah, go
Yeah,
ahead.
so we always provide the computers. If there's any specific requirements as far as software, we're always asking for that upfront in the job description. So you have a specific EHR, obviously, Microsoft Office suite is a guarantee. But our goal when we're hiring somebody for a provider or client is to accelerate that learning curve as much as possible. We don't want to have to go through, I'll give we don't want to go through epic training if we're hiring for a hospital, for example, right? We want to bring somebody that can hit the ground running.
I love it. Well, and that's, as we talk about cost savings, we're buying a new MacBook Air for our staff every 3 years. I mean, there's these different things. We're reimbursing for internet at home, some of the stuff. This is all costs that get folded into this as well.
That's correct.
Um, Lynette says, do you think anyone will ever start a therapist infrastructure org that will contract out to therapists or contract out therapists to practices, et cetera? Unpack that a little more, Lynette. Because I'm making notes over here, by the way, of like talk to Will and Chris about let's start something together. Like I think this, if it's as
Well,
good as it sounds, there's a huge demand in our industry for this.
well, I've always been a fan of infrastructure organizations, particularly for nonprofits,
Yeah.
and we all know how hard it is to hire and keep good clinicians. And I'm listening to this conversation. You're an infrastructure organization for administrative behind the scenes infrastructure for private practices or and for other industries. But like I'm just curious about Ken's thoughts. It's sort of off topic, but I'm just curious, like it's just popping in my like, do you ever think that this type of entity will ever exist for therapists to be contracted out, like a PEO or an
Hmm.
infrastructure organization for that will hire and contract out therapists to hospitals, private practices, agencies. Um,
Yeah, you're doing nurses. I mean, you're providing
Right.
nursing services. So when you do a nurse from the Philippines, are they also licensing in the U.S. typically?
That is usually something we do not do, just
Okay.
because the state or federal licensing doesn't always translate. We do some clinical things on, let's say, chart review. You can do
Radiology reading.
yeah, radiology reading, telehealth, things like that. But being the actual physician,
Provider, rendering
the
provider.
provider is a little, I would say, outside of our wheelhouse.
Well, if you start a tiny house division in the Philippines where you can house expatriate therapists, I think Lynette would be interested in heading that division for you. Yeah.
He's
Uh,
speaking on your behalf on that. I like
Everybody gets an emotional support animal and a laptop and a tiny house on a beach. So, Kevin asked what the pricing structure is. In general, again, I think from talking to my own team, the number I have pegged in my head, and I know it gives or takes, but we're looking at roughly 16 to 18,000 a year for a full timer.
Yeah, I can address that, Kevin. Thanks for the question. Costs are, that's going to be important for everybody. So, Kevin, we have a couple of different ways of doing this. We either do a flat monthly retainer per se per employee that never changes. We also can do an hourly rate. So it's a flat hourly rate. Our clients are only billed for the hours that are actually work. So if someone's on PTO, back to the question earlier, PTO out sick, whatever the case is, you're not billed for the time someone's not there. So very easy to understand that model. And our pricing is based on the salary of our employees. So back to the conversation earlier, we're trying to provide a really good salary. We want folks to want to come work for us, hiring experienced folks. So based on the role, if we're talking hourly rates, it can range from 13 US dollars an hour and you name it, up to 18, 19, 20 an hour, depending on the role. And again, that's, years and years of experience. So if you're looking at it on an hourly basis, that's a good way to peg it. And it does vary by role. But again, that gives you a feel for some of the roles we are currently placing in the pricing structure there, Kevin.
Within, Katie asked, within healthcare organizations, what roles are you seeing people fill? Is it billing? Is it scheduling? Is it insurance verification? Like what's
Yep.
the capability set here?
Yeah, so we're rarely reinventing the wheel. I think kind of as we talked about in our presentation yesterday, we're basically taking folks from, Humana and PwC and Accenture and United Healthcare. And so what we see in our business that's really easy to find is anything revenue cycle. So think intake, prior authorization, insurance verifications, AR, coding, anything in that space is very easy and common to find and really high quality folks. And then on the support side, on the patient facing roles, just general customer care, scheduling, inquiries, things of that nature. You can almost think of it as like a front office virtual assistant. And then, on the back end, accountants, accounts payable, CPAs, even, analysts, financial analysts, things of that nature. The way we always put it is, if it can be done remotely, it's already being done in the Philippines, and we're not reinventing the wheel on anything here.
Hmm. Other questions for these guys? You can either unmute or you can put it in the chat and I'll serve it up for them.
Yeah, Kim, Michelle asked a good question. She asked if there's an issue with an employee, what support do we offer? Great question, Michelle. Again, back to us being the employer of record, we want you to step out of that. So, in the case that we had an employee that wasn't performing, whatever the case may be, you simply let our team know. All of our clients have full operational support. So, you've got a team lead, you've got an operations person on our staff that's overseeing that employee. You would simply let us know and we handle it from there. So again, we're trying to keep you out of that. You're looking for support from high valued employees. It's our job to sort that out on the back end, Michelle.
The cost savings on that alone, I've probably lost track of the practice owners that need to get rid of somebody and they just can't pull the trigger because they're therapists. They're empathetic. They want to believe the best, all these things. And that loss in productivity, that paycheck burn every month, and not having a better person in that position is so costly. So
Yeah, Will and I joke we always say we're in the headache removal business.
yeah.
All the problems that come from an HR standpoint, that's something that we take over.
Mm,
And then going back to employee performance, one of the things we ask for when we're starting is, what are the KPIs? What does success look like? And that's
mm,
something that we're managing on our side in, obviously in partnership with our clients to make sure that they're delivering, week one, week two, it's not going to be exactly where you need it, right? Just like hiring any new employee, it could be. But our goal is to ramp that person up as fast as we can and get them to overperform to your expectations.
Love it. And I know we scheduled this from 12:30. If any of you need to jump, please jump. If you would like a conversation with Will or Chris, here's what I'd love for you to do. I'd love for you to shoot Alina an email, and we will make the connection for you. And or if you bump into them on your own, tell them you're from POW Conference, and they'll take extra care of you. Alina's email, she'll put it in the chat, is Alina, Alena, at semiprivatepractice.com. So Will, Chris, tell us if somebody reaches out to you, if we make a connection here for you, and like what is the next step prior to signing on the dotted line? How do we go about this?
Yeah, go ahead, Chris. You might have a different answer than me. You go right ahead.
Yeah,
Go right
yeah.
ahead.
So our standard process, we always want to jump on, kind of a quick call, like understand your needs, get a feel for your business, because at the end of the day, what we're really doing is we're setting up your office in the Philippines to access the talent there. So we want to really understand your business as much as we can. And then once we get a feel for what you're looking for, we'll obviously make recommendations. If we don't think we can do it, we'll certainly say, hey, this is not a good fit, give you a recommendation for other ideas. But if we do think it's a fit, and it likely is, we'll ask for usually a job description. We'll say, okay, you'll send over a billing specialist, for example. We'll go to the market. We'll take it to our talent acquisition team. We'll search candidates, and what we'll do is we'll get back to you in usually 1 or 2 weeks with a list of candidates. So it'll have, resumes, recorded interviews, any supporting documents that they may have that you'd like to see. And then you can say, okay, I like, Chris doesn't look like a great fit, but Will looks excellent. Let's set up an interview. And then you can vet that person on your side, give us feedback, Will's great, or hey, I'm looking for something a little bit different, and we'll kind of go down that line to find you the perfect fit. And we're
Mhm.
happy to do that. There's never any cost for that. It's more about kind of getting you comfortable with the process, getting you comfortable with the talent, and then post that we can figure out the pricing.
I love it. Other questions for these guys?
I have experience with starting the process with one of those companies, and they're from the Philippines as well. And I send all my job descriptions, I send my SOPs for billing, I send all the tasks listed, I send videos, and they do the process of fitting me with the best candidate. I went through three candidates, and they're absolutely not a good fit. How do you guys guarantee that they gonna be what I need, so I don't have to keep like when they send me somebody, when I say they need to know how to invoice, they need to have some knowledge about claims and all that US standard expectations, and like their invoice process or experience was from selling something from the warehouse or something like this, that it really didn't match my field. How do you guys assure that so we don't have to keep changing from one person to another?
Yeah, Chris, I'll answer that. Great question. That, of course, is all started on our recruiting side, right? So again, we're not here to overpromise that we're going to be the perfect fit, but we've done this long enough that if you gave us a good job description, I am fully confident we would not send you someone that was not aligned. Now, we may send you three and two are great, one's not. Your experience, we hear this often, but Chris will tell you the same thing. Our business is built on people and recruiting, right? That's where we start, is finding and taking care of great people, and then everything else takes care of itself. So with what you just described there, fully confident that you wouldn't have that experience with us. Again, we'd have to prove that to you. But I understand where you're coming from. That's the need for that detailed job description, because they wouldn't even go through our filter if they couldn't check nine of the 10 boxes that you're asking for. So I hope that answers your question. But what you're asking is very common. We typically don't have this challenge because we're a little bit more slow. Like Chris said, it could take up to 2 weeks to find people. We're a little slower sometimes, but we want to find the right people versus rushing and giving you three by tomorrow.
Thank you.
And I think, and I could be wrong here, and I don't know that you're referring to Hello Raish or not, but I know a lot of folks in our industry have tried the Hello Raish path and burned through three or four people really quick.
Hmm.
I think that and again, we're in the first stages of doing this with Will and Chris as well, but the sense I get is almost like that Hello Raish is the equivalent of BetterHelp or Talkspace, and versus what you bring into your own practice, right? Like generally, I'm just going to trust that the clinician quality in any one of your practices is going to blow away what I get on one of those platforms. So any of the platform services I've seen around this, there seems to be a lot more loose quality control versus, I think people that are Will and Chris, the people they hire are an extension of their own values, that kind of thing. Could
Yeah.
be wrong.
Yeah, I
But
think I think the big difference there is just the business structure itself. Like Hello is they have a bench of folks, as I understand it, and so they're trying to place people that are already on their bench with the clients, as opposed to going out and getting somebody custom off like from the job description, and then putting them with the client. So that process makes a big difference.
hmm.
I had a quick question. So the full-time, so we're providing the position needs to be a full-time position. So like if we were looking for admin support more in our off hours and weekends, so it doesn't matter pricing or anything to create that full-time, and full-time for you all is 40 hours.
That's
That's correct.
Yep. That's right, Katie. Go ahead, Chris, if you want to address that. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say, the reason we typically say full time is kind of going back to that stability of the employee. We've done project-based work is actually okay in a full-time role, but the reason we want to do full-time is because the employees in the Philippines primarily are looking for that stability, right? They want the full monthly paycheck, they want the benefits, And you can hire people in part-time roles, there's no question, but the turnover is high and the quality is not as good. So that's something we try to stay away from.
If we need outside normal business hours, is that an option? If we need,
Not a problem at all. And actually, it's usually easier to recruit. We do some work in, say, nighttime coverage, which is daytime Philippines. That's actually even easier to recruit because that's obviously a more favorable role over there.
okay.
Thank you.
What's the time difference?
Thanks, Jenny.
They are 13 hours ahead right now.
Oh,
It'll be
wow. Okay.
um,
Of the East Coast. Yeah, of the East Coast.
East Coast. Yeah.
Okay. Um, Now my brain's turning, by the way. Yeah, I texted Alina and Wade during this, like, hey, our next semi-private practice hire, which we've talked about, we probably need to be doing this too. But now my marketing brain is turning. Like on our last call, we were talking CRM stuff and database reactivation. Theoretically, we could staff outbound marketing stuff here. We've got dormant clients. We could hire somebody full time to reach back out and check on these clients. I mean, that's not outside the capacity of what you guys do, correct? Or we don't.
We do that now, Ken. Yep, we do that now. Yep,
That probably it doesn't take a lot of reactivated clients for that to pay for itself.
that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're doing that now.
Other questions while we got these guys?
I'll ask a question, Ken. So I have, again, from another company, a team in the Philippines, and the language, like when I ask, like they get their list, and the language barrier sometimes can be very difficult, right? They say, yes, they understand. I do it in a Word document, and then I do a video as well. And then we meet every week as well. And I think my checklist is getting done, and then I get something that's not. How do you guys take care of some of those things? You guys are weeding out some of that for us, or I guess that I know that it's hard because it's a whole nother country, but that has been it's difficult. Like I do use people for my marketing
Mhm.
for probably 3 years now from the Philippines, and it's just taking me now to be like, oh yeah, that's good content, right? But it's like you have to train them and get them to where you want them to be.
Yeah, Valerie, we sound like a broken record, so sorry to be redundant, but
No, that's fine.
so much of this is flushed out on the front end. Again,
Yes, that's what I'm
Chris
hoping.
Chris made a great point, and we can't speak for all the others out there in the marketplace, but for those who have a bench of people they're trying to place with a client like yourself, as we've said, Valerie, we're totally different.
Mhm.
We're recruiting specifically for you. So that
Right.
person's language capabilities gets vetted out before you ever even see anybody. So a lot of times Chris and I will also interview them just to make sure that our recruiting team is checking all the boxes. So again, we don't have the magic answer here, Valerie, but we do a lot of recruiting on the front end to vet this out. So we would never
Good.
have someone come to you that wasn't conversational to the level that your customers or your clients would expect. They would never even get to you.
Right. Okay. So then as a company, because right now I have like 6 or 8 part-timers there, right? Because they
Yeah.
each do their own thing.
Yeah.
How does like I don't think I could hire not yet, maybe one full-time, say, billing person. Like I need marketing, I have them run my Kajabi website, my online training institute, right? I have them do all these different things. So tell me about that. How could that benefit me?
Yeah, and that's a similar question to what Sherry's asking. She's asking, hey, could you hire someone that does a little bit of everything? Kind of what you're saying, Valerie, not quite. And the answer is yes. Again, back to the job description. If you need someone to do some front desk support, some scheduling support, and some kind of passive ARAP, absolutely. We'll go and find the person that's capable of that. Again, back to the recruiting process versus here's someone off of our bench, we think they're a fit. So again, we
Mhm.
have the ability to custom that role based on your needs. As long as it's full-time support, which again, Chris talked about is really the sweet spot, and we can find the people, absolutely we can do it. And if we can't find them, we'll tell you, sorry, we can't find an IT professional that can also do, AP. If we can't find it, we'll tell you.
Right.
But very common, Sherry, that was a question she asked. Very common for us to merge a couple of roles together find that person, have them full time, and then they're doing, numbers of different things for you
And
internally.
and I'll throw in there, not that Chris and Will can't find unicorns, but this is one of my drums I beat in the 1F meetings and Streamline is, we do this with our clinical director roles, right? I need to find somebody who can run a marketing department, really gets culture, by the way, can act as a fractional CFO, and they also need to be able to cook when we have barbecues. Be nice if they know how to fly a plane as well. Like I'm sure these people are out there. At some point, you can't afford that person, or they're running their own business. So we talk a lot about splintering positions, and I know that it's
Mhm.
hard in the sense that but the problem is we get people that are A plus at one thing, they're B minus at one thing, and they're a D at something else or an F,
Yep.
and we tolerate it because it averages to a C. And so here's my challenge on that, Valerie. And I'm not that Will and Chris can't do some unicorn shopping, but I would argue that the price point is such at this that it's a worthwhile experiment to staff up and see if you can get it to pay for itself, right? Before you
Mhm.
try and jam five things into one shoe,
Mhm.
okay, maybe I'm just going to bite the bullet and hire two people instead of one. I think having dedicated people at this price point, and you should do the math. I can help you do the math. I think it's going to pay for itself really quick if they're really dedicated and solid at it, right? So that's the other thing to think
Yeah.
about here is in general, US or anywhere,
Sure.
nobody can, nobody's a quadruple threat. If they are, they're probably working for themselves.
Yeah.
Right.
Kevin, let me,
So,
oh, sorry, Valerie, go ahead. I was going to address Kevin's question,
no,
please.
so that was my thought too, Ken, was, just because like when you're really good at billing or social media or whatever, like keep them in their role, their gift, right?
Hmm.
So what about the idea of a few of us businesses going, like, I mean, I have a couple of nonprofits and a clinic and, stuff like that. Like, do you allow, I mean, I'm assuming you allow that. Like I myself could purchase one full-time employee in marketing, right? And then share that with a couple other businesses.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely, Valerie. Again, assuming that was something that both partners, what we'd call partners or clients wanted to do,
Yeah.
absolutely. I'm seeing Katie respond like, hey, great idea. So, of course, if we had like-minded individuals, because that person would be dedicated to two different firms or two different
Right.
practices. So, yeah, Valerie, of course, absolutely.
Probably the more it'd be like-minded and like systemed, right? So if
Yeah,
one of you is
true.
on therapy
Mhm.
notes and one of you is on simple
That's
practice,
true.
you're going
That's
to
a
get
great
more.
point, Ken. Yeah,
But
great
you're
point.
both running therapy
Mhm.
notes. You both use Hushmail. I mean, the more that the systems
Great point.
overlap,
Yep.
probably the easier it is. What was
Great point.
Kevin's question? Oh,
Mhm.
Oh, I
Kevin,
was just going to address Kevin. He's asking if we go over to the Philippines to oversee these folks. And Kevin, I won't make you watch our Christmas video karaoke that Chris and I did, but just know we're over there a lot. We're in the Philippines, either he or I, 3 times a year, sometimes four, depending on the year. One of our team members is heading there in 2 weeks. So yes, Kevin, we're there all the time because they're our team, they're our employees. This is our company. So yes, just to be clear, we're there all the time. We
and
we were just
Philippines karaoke is next level, right? Like, I
I
mean, this.
mean, but when Will sings it, Ken, it's not. So, yeah.
How much specialized you guys are mental health compared to the other industries? Because I know that some of those companies they have a little bit of everything, and then when they say that they doing mental health is just like 1%, and they are not really specifics or accustomed to EHRs like simple practice, therapy notes, etc.
Yeah, I would answer that by saying our footprint in the healthcare space is very large. So everything from infusion centers to eye care doctors to mental health practices is our focus. We have, again, I mentioned this, we have almost 2,000 employees. Are the lion's share of those folks doing mental health practice? They're not. But the lion's share of our folks are within the healthcare practices. So we do touch a lot of different roles, but I don't want to overpromise and tell you that 1,800 of our 2,000 are in the mental health practice because they're not.
But you do have people that they're accustomed to
Yes,
simple
yes,
practice and
absolutely.
like systems that most mental health providers and companies are using.
Yes,
I
Okay.
think,
absolutely.
yeah, I think the key there is kind of as Will mentioned, is getting that job description, exactly the softwares that you want them to know, and then
Yeah.
working to go find the folks that have that experience.
Yeah.
All right, to Will and Chris, we went a little rogue here, and I'm blown away. Wait, did you make this or did Alina?
Alina did. That's
Alina,
not.
you're a rock star. So we
Yeah.
filled we created one of these really quick. We'll post the link, but it's a interest form, tells them kind of what you're looking for, how many staff members you need, anything else. So we'll post that in the chat. It'll email straight to them when you do that. So if that's okay, Will and Chris,
Yeah, of course.
we'll start
Yeah.
populating your inbox with that form. So
Be great. Thanks.
hope that's okay. Alina, you are amazing.
That's quick.
I say there's not a lot of
I did
unicorns out
not
there.
do that.
Alina, you
Wade
might
did
be.
that. Wade did that. I'm not going to take credit for that.
Oh, I
Wade,
thought you said Alina did it.
Wade did it.
Wade wears the unicorn horn today. So, all right. Any last call for questions? Will and Chris, thank you. Katie shot me a couple messages too. Like, the entrepreneurial juices get my wheels. Yeah, right. Like they're turning right now. Of like, good grief, what else could I do if this was my cost structure for? I mean, heck, there's my own personal assistant I've needed forever at that price, right? By the way, that's even something you guys can do if somebody just needs a dedicated VA for them.
Yep.
We could do that.
Yeah, we actually just hired a VA for a infusion association. So doing the same thing kind of Will touched on. So yeah, absolutely.
Wow, all kinds of stuff is queuing up. One of my dreams for a long time at my practice is to have a practice concierge, somebody whose job is just to, at Christmas time, so clinicians don't have to miss sessions, track down where the stormtrooper helmet is that their kid wants or whatever. This may be the solution to my practice concierge dream as an employee benefit. So awesome, guys. Thank you.
Thanks for the time, everybody. We appreciate you joining over the weekend, especially.
It's great information, guys. We appreciate it. You may not be a ton of mental health yet, but wait when we're gonna change that, I think. So good
Thanks,
stuff.
everybody. Enjoy your
All right,
weekend.
everybody.
We
We'll see you
appreciate
in about 15 minutes for the last one of these. It's with Lynette and Lemma and Valerie. We're going to be talking about nonprofits and their journey, kind of starting those, launching those, pain points, learning curves, etc. Will, Chris, thanks.
Appreciate you,
Wade,
everybody.
Carolina,
See
you
ya.
rock.
Bye.